10만 원. 사파이어 니트로.
That's a sapphire Menage for 472.
Okay. And they 665, 65, 65.
그러니까
네.
쿨링은 이게 제일 좋아요.
아, 예, 그쵸.
네.
캔이 제일 크니까. The 77, 65, 60.
So here I am in the magical land of Korea, Seoul, and today can only mean one thing, and that is a used PC parts hunt in the middle of this, I'd say so far, pretty interesting city. First of all, the food is amazing here. The subway system's really good, but the actual traffic in a car or a taxi is horrendously bad. And another really good thing about Korea is the exchange rate. I've seen the best exchange rates for cash here in the world over any other place I've been to. So you just go into a money exchange and you'll literally change your money over at a difference of 0.125% or something like that. So the mid-market rate was 812 won. I got 800 flat on an Aussie dollar. So I don't even know how these guys are making any money doing these kinds of exchanges. Though mainly what's on the agenda today is Gravis cards, because I've got all the other stuff, and of course things like power supplies. In Japan I already got some power supplies and they're very hard to cart around in a suitcase. So I think the Gravis card is the best play if I can find, of course, the right prices. Now the really good news is that I just got here to this station. This is called Yongsan, and apparently it's the tech hub of Seoul. And there's already a guy carrying a B450 motherboard. I spotted him and I'm like, yep, that means I'm in the right spot. And now another couple of things too is that there's a couple of viewers that want to come for the ride, and they're local people in Korea here. So I thought to myself, I could always use the help since I found this place on the internet, seems to be the place to go. But the auction systems here in Korea, I still don't understand them quite yet. Facebook Marketplace is an absolute bust, and I'm guessing if there is a system that it'll use a application from the company called Naver, and essentially they're the guys who own Line and all those other places. So hopefully we can find something online if we don't find something here in Yongsan. So that aside, let's go for the ride, get your used price performance capes on, see what we can find. So we're now here at the Yongsan Market right in the middle of Seoul, and this is so crazy because this market is 4 floors, but since we're here on a Sunday, a lot of the stores are closed, but there's still enough good stores here that are open to check out prices and see what is the deal in Korea. Now straight away, used parts generally go a bit cheaper than new parts. And I'd say depending on the seller, you can get a good deal. I've been looking around here and it seems that mining cards in bulk were 1063 gigabytes and also some 1066 gigabytes. And they're going for around 100 a pop, I guess 100 USD a pop. I'm trying to negotiate with the sellers that if I can get a cheaper price on, say, if I buy 5 of these 1060s, can they do us a 10% discount? And so far, they've only really budged like literally not even like 1%. So I'm like, yeah, they don't really negotiate that much at all. There's the asking price, that's what they want. And maybe they can give you just a little bit off, like a real little bit. So kind of having a tough time negotiating at the moment. But of course, we're gonna check out online and see what we can find with the Korean equivalent of Craigslist, because apparently there could be some good deals on there now. Another thing I also noticed with the 1070s was that they were a lot more expensive than the 1060s, 6 gigabyte versus 3 gigabyte variants. So what that meant was, as we said before, was that there must have been a lot of mining cards that were used with 1060s rather than 1070s, because in Australia, a lot of 1070s are usually cheaper at the moment because a lot of people bought them up in Australia for mining. So whatever's bought in bulk, I guess, will be sold in bulk. And when it's sold in bulk, you'll usually get better prices to sell all that stock in that particular country. But speaking of the country and what is good here, we've got monitors. They are so cheap. I'm looking at like 144 hertz monitors from brands that I've never heard of before, especially one called NewSync, where you can get just a little over 100 USD, a 144 hertz 24-inch panel, and they look really nice. So monitors are definitely really cheap here. Keyboards are ridiculously cheap here too, and they've even got stores that have all these shapes and all these mice that I've never seen before. And the funny thing on that is that I found a keyboard behind me with mechanical blues, and even though it's used, it's going for, I think it's a little bit under 10 bucks, and that's a mechanical keyboard. So I actually might pick up one of those, take that home with me, because who can pass up a good deal on a mechanical keyboard? But with that aside, we're gonna check these online deals now, see what the verdict is. I might even just skip the used graphics cards entirely, because if they're not a good price, there's no point in me loading up the suitcase with deals that aren't that good. Now, another thing on the CPUs, you're probably thinking, what about Ryzen CPUs? What about Intel CPUs? What about memory? I've checked all that stuff out, and it's actually more expensive than it is in Australia. So I guess every country has its benefits, like monitors and keyboards here, but at the same time, it has its disadvantages, and that is looking like at the moment, the disadvantages are the parts I need, and that is graphics cards and CPUs. But of course, we will keep trying and see what we can get.
Let's see. Far from where here? Far away from here?
If he wants to sell it, tell him to come to the city.
It's like take 5 hours to come.
Oh, really? Oh. So I'm now with Arnold, and he's quickly going to explain the two different sites where you can get good used deals from in South Korea. So we'll hand it over to him.
So Korea has two sites for PC parts. Our friend over there is looking at 중고나라, and 중고나라 is like the Craigslist of Korea. People sell their used stuff on there, not just PC parts, but just used stuff in general. So sometimes when people don't know what they're selling, you can get really good prices for it. But other times, it's just like any other used site. People will try to sell stuff that's for more than it's worth. And then the other used site is Tanawa. And in Tanawa, we have a lot of wholesalers that try to sell their used stuff quickly, and you can get a really good price performance from that site.
So we spent over an hour in the cafe looking, searching for all the best deals, and it's pretty crazy because we got onto like a 1050 Ti, which looked like it was a really good price for around maybe 65 USD for a 1050 Ti. The guy had 10 of them apparently, but then John and Arnold, they called these guys up, and the first guy with a 1050 Ti sold out. And then we tried the Radeon Fury, which came up next, and we saw that for around about 100 USD. And at that price, a Fury's a really good price. Called the guy up, it's gone. So next deal was a GTX 980 for around 100 USD. Called the guy up, gone. And then this last deal that we've got onto is a GTX 970 for around about that 60 USD price tag. And that is exceptional value for money, but we've messaged the guy now, and apparently someone else is in the works of picking it up. And I said, look, throw in an extra $5, see what he says. So he's thinking about it at the moment. And I've got a little bit of a boss face on here because I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have to go back to that mall and buy the GTX 1063 gigabytes. And the GTX 1063 gigabytes, the problem when you're trying to flip them in a gaming PC is that people want the 6 gigabytes. They literally think that the 6 gigabytes has double the performance of a 3 gigabyte. And that's not the case at all. It's like 5 or 10, I think it's like 10% faster. But of course you got more VRAM. And the prices of the 1066 gigabytes here are just too expensive. So I'm kind of keen to pick up, Discipline says, Brian, go get the 1063 gigabytes. That's what Discipline tells me to do. And I'm just a little bit upset because I want to get the 1066 gigabytes, or I want to find a 1070. Now, the funny thing is about the 1070 is that the cheapest prices I can find them for is about 300 Aussie dollars, because it's really, actually, this is one of the hardest parts hunts I've done in terms of doing math in my head, because it's like 1 Aussie dollars 800 won, and it's such a weird number because I've got to then translate it all in my brain, and my brain's actually getting a little bit tired. So for around 300 Aussie dollars for a 1070, I can get that in Oz easily for the same price. And you guys know I'm only filling up this suitcase with the best of the best deals. So the 1063 gigabytes, they're going for around 93 US dollars, 135 Aussie dollars or something like that. That's a pretty good deal. It's solid. It's just, again, selling 3 gigabyte cards, it's actually quite hard in a gaming PC. People will literally pay a bigger premium, more so than the difference between the two cards of a 6 gigabyte versus 3 gigabyte, for example. They'll pay that premium easy and pick up your 1066 gigabyte system, gaming PC. So that's kind of the dilemma I'm faced with, even though it's a really good price. So we'll go and pick up maybe 1 or 2 of those cards, and in the meantime, see if someone gets back to us, see if we can find a better deal online for some of these other cards, and maybe even pick up one of those 144 Hertz monitors. Though, the 144 Hertz monitors, I'm gonna check them out and see if they can package them well in the boxes. And if they can, then we can put it in the suitcase and it won't get broken in transit. So that's what we're looking for at the moment. Let's see if we can do it. We just got out of the first store where we picked up our first deal on the street in terms of graphics cards, and they were the GTX 1063 gigabytes. Now, I bought 2 of them, and then I said, if I buy a third, can I get a discount? So he took 5,000 won off, which I think is like $7. So hey, dollar saved is a dollar made, and now we've got 3 GTX 1063 gigabytes. The problem is I'm walking around here and I'm seeing such good deals on stuff that I know I can't take home. And just like I said before, it's frustrating me because I walked past this case, 3 RGB ring fans, tempered glass at the front, acrylic side panel, and it's 38,000 won, which would be like 30 USD or something, or 45 Aussie dollars. It's ridiculously cheap. In Oz, I'd be buying so many of those things. The keyboard we picked up before, we got one of those, but I'd clean the rest of the box out if I was in Australia. And then the monitors, like they're so good, they're so cheap, but I just can't picture myself stuffing a monitor into a suitcase. Like I'd be going through customs and the guys would be scratching their heads and they're like, man, this guy's got a problem. And I mean, I do have a problem with an addiction to used PC parts and stuff like that and good prices, but you gotta let it, there is a limit, you know, and you've gotta let it slide when you get to that limit. And that's kind of putting a monitor in the suitcase, that's definitely reaching that limit where I think I've got to curb myself, and yeah, I gotta curb it. So we're just leaving Yongsan now, and I'm going around looking at like every store just to make sure I didn't pass up any deals. And right when I thought storage was one of those areas that I was missing, I found this one place doing 1 terabyte hard drives, and it was about 17,000 won a pop, which I think in Australia would be close to around 20 Aussie dollars. USD would be around 15 USD. So I just said to him, can we do a little discount if I buy quite a few of these? And he said, sure, he'll do me 500 won off, which maybe 50 cents or something like that. And I mean, yeah, it's always good to get a little bit off. So I bought 5 of them, and now we have 5 1 terabyte drives in the kitty. So that's gonna be helping out. And I'm just gonna look around one last time online for some deals, see if we can find anything, because I'm trying to get that deal that really makes the whole trip satisfying. That one deal, the one that you're like, yeah, I got it. And I haven't got it yet. So I spent the rest of the afternoon with John and Arnold, and we ended up looking on those websites again. And this time around, I was looking for some low-end graphics cards, but I couldn't find a whole lot that was in Seoul, and anything in Seoul pointed back to Yongsan Market on the 5th floor. And unfortunately, the 5th floor was closed today because it was a Sunday. So it was a really weird situation where everything pointed towards going back to Yongsan Market, whether it be new parts or used parts. So I think in Korea, that is the place to go to tech, whether you're buying either. And so what we're gonna do is tomorrow, I still have a bit of time before I have to head off to the airport. So I do have to fly out tomorrow, but I do wanna go for one last deal. And since Yongsan has a bus that goes straight to the airport, it's called Incheon Airport, I am going to plan out my day so I go through Yongsan and check out that 5th floor, because it was where all the good deals were pointing on online to that 5th floor. So the 5th floor holds the answers, but I won't find out until tomorrow. And in terms of CPUs, motherboards, memory, and also like Ryzen and B450 and stuff like that, the used stuff on all CPUs and motherboards and RAM was just simply overpriced to what I could get it for in Australia. And that was one thing I looked around for and I just couldn't get good deals on. So I will be sticking to just trying to find good deals on GPUs at the moment, especially for tomorrow. Though of course, if something good does come around, I will snap it up. But that being said, you can see via analyzing all the different stores that there's a trend sweeping through, and that is people don't budge much on prices, and all the prices are pretty much compared the same at all different stores, similar in price. So weird situation. Korea is definitely a different market so far, and it's interesting because I like seeing new markets, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy how there's such a big disparity, as we talked about before, between some of the prices on some of the parts where they're so cheap and they're so good for deals, and then some of the parts aren't that good on the other hand. Though one thing I did forget to mention was power supplies were very well priced here. And I honestly would love to pick up 2 more power supplies where I saw them for about 19,000 won. So I think that's around $15 for like a 550 watt power supply or something like that. And they would go in the suitcase, but the problem is I don't have much storage left in my suitcase. They'll be like 1.7 kilo each, and that'll be about 3.4 kilos. So I've only got another like 5 kilo roughly in my suitcase. Well, not much at all now because I've got to put 3 graphics cards and 5 hard drives in. So we're very limited for space. We're hoping to find a really good deal tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Let's make this happen. We'll see you tomorrow. So we're now back at the second day and we're at Yongsan, at the same market we were yesterday, but there's a couple of stores that are now open. And I've already checked this GPU market where they've got motherboards as well. And just all the cards are really at that price that they're just not that good of a deal compared to Australia. And we did go and after that see some CPU cooler places, and they were really good because they finally had the location of where all the Zalman CPU coolers have gone. So pretty much, I think Zalman's sticking to just the Korean domestic market now, where they're pushing out some decent value. I mean, for around 20 USD, you can get a pretty solid cooler, or at least what looks like a solid cooler in the box. And then after that, I saw the wackiest cooler I've ever seen, where it had like a side one tower for cooling your CPU, and then the next side of the tower was there for cooling your DDR3 or 4 DIMMs. But unfortunately for this cooler, they wanted over 50 USD and it was used. So I was thinking to myself, nah, I'll pass on that. But with that said, let's finally start heading to the 5th floor where we saw all those used deals online yesterday were pointing to this floor. So we're now wound up on the 5th floor and we've checked pretty much every store up here, and some of them are doing, I guess, mediocre deals like the other stores, but we did find one store that had some RX 470s for sale, and they were asking about 65,000 won, which would be just a little bit over 50 USD, and close to around 80 Aussie dollars for a really good condition RX 470 with a backplate. And they also had 3 other models where there was one with no backplate, the RX 470D XFX, which they wanted 5,001 less. And then they had the Gigabyte and also Sapphire models, and they wanted 5,001 more. So the XFX RX 470 that we had for 65,001 is probably one of the best deals I've seen in Korea for GPUs so far. I'm going to grab a couple of them, but I will check out this building quickly, do a swipe through it, see if there's any other deals going on, as well as the first building we went to, which was actually 21, and this building's called 22. So this is a huge market for PCs. I think you could spend a whole day here, but you would need someone to translate Korean, and if it wasn't for John, then I'd be having a seriously difficult time negotiating any sort of deal here. So we scoured building number 22 and also building 21, and I actually ran out of time. So I'm at the bus stop now, ready to go to the airport. But the really good news is that I managed to get an R9 280X for 35,001. And I believe that's somewhere near 30 USD. And it's a custom model, and the guy said it works really well, it's fine. So I snapped that up as soon as I could. And then after that, I went back and got 2 of those XFX RX 470s with the backplates. And the reason I chose them, because it was funny, we did find a store where they had RX 470 Sapphire Nitros going for around 60,001, so it was just a little bit cheaper. But the reason I picked the XFX models was because they looked really good. They were in mint condition. And since I'm going back to Australia, I'm not going to be able to get warranty on these parts. And so that's a big risk that I'm taking by going with the 2 Sapphires, where I know they've been mined on heavily just by inspecting them, because they've still got that hard ingrained dust. But another thing too is the Sapphire models that I've picked up in the past on mining deals have the highest failure rates. So usually when they're in gaming PCs, they're going to last a long time. But for some reason on the mining benches, the Sapphire cards do get some weird problem with corrosion from the actual coolers themselves. So we ended up picking up 3 Gravis cards in total, and the R9 280X was the deal that satisfied me. It was definitely that one that I was looking for, and I got it. We'll talk about some more deals soon. I've just got to get on a bus, get to the airport, and then we'll give you guys an update, because I'm going to clean some of these parts too when I get back to Australia before we conclude today's video. And now we are back in the Tech Yes studio, and I have already given that keyboard some Tech Yes loving. It is looking so good, and that's what it's all about, man. I would have definitely cleaned out the whole box of those keyboards if I was local. And the funny thing is about my suitcase, I got in 3 kilograms over the luggage limit, and so I had to sweet talk them into letting me just push it all through, and they did. So Korean Air, not too bad. The flight was okay, didn't sleep that well at all, like 3 hours sleep on the plane. But getting all these deals back on the table has definitely thundercharged me, because what we got here was 5 hard drives, 1 terabyte hard drives, the good stuff. We got 3 GTX 1063 gigabytes, 2 RX 470s, and also a R9 280X, and of course that keyboard. And we got this whole total here. I'll put the price breakdown up for you guys. A little under 600,000 Korean won, which translates to around about 740 Aussie dollars and just a little bit under 500 USD. So for 6 Gravis cards, 5 hard drives, and a mechanical keyboard, I'd say we did pretty well. Definitely that R9 280X was that one deal I was looking for that was going to be the cream of the crop. And I mean, for that price, it is just ridiculously good. So Korea definitely has some good deals to offer if you're keen to search around. I mean, the Yongsan Market looked like it was the place to go beforehand, and then after the fact, it definitely turned out that it was the place to go. Now, going there on the Sunday, it wasn't too bad because those 3 GTX 1060s, they ended up being the best deals. And that's what I've talked about in the past. If you know the price is good, then why not take the plunge? And I knew even if we found it cheaper, it would have only been like really marginally cheaper than that. And they were in good condition, and that ended up being the best deal I could get on GTX 1060s. Now the hard drives, they were like literally overpriced everywhere else. They wanted 30,000 won for 1 terabyte used drives everywhere else. So picking these up for 16,500 won was absolutely amazing. And then that keyboard, of course, absolutely amazing. We've given it some tech yes loving. Looks like brand new, RGB backlit, blue mechanical switch. You've even got a holder there where you can put things like your hard drive on there. So when you're typing, you can just look at your hard drive. And also, who could forget the question of the day? And this comes from Itamar Blomont, and he says, what site do you use to buy your PC parts? And this ties in perfectly with today's video because, as we saw, it depends on where you live. Here in Australia, I'm using Gumtree and also Facebook Marketplace predominantly to look for those one-time used deals. I also do check out eBay, but they're the 3 sites I would use in Australia. I know over in the US, they use apps like Letgo as well as Craigslist. And then in Japan, of course, that's completely different where they've got Yahoo Auction and Mercari. So I really have to stress, depending on where you live, it's going to be very different. But coming back from Korea, and even though I only spent 5 days there, I'm really going to miss that place. It was just so good. The people are lovely. As we saw at the Parts Hunt, John and Arnold joined in, and they were so friendly. They showed me all these local restaurants and helped us out with the parts hunts. And one thing about the food with Korea, I had a sneaking suspicion that the food was really healthy before I went there. And after I went there, I came out thinking, well, isn't it a wonder that they're like literally the #1 country for PC games, like in terms of their competitiveness? Whatever game they focus on, they really stomp the competition. And I feel like their brilliance comes from a part of that from a brilliant diet. These guys eat so healthy, lots of vegetables, and it was just one thing, like that 5 days I spent there was almost like a tech yes cleansing for my body. I don't know what it was about South Korea, but I really want to go back there and spend some more time there, sort of like with maybe some sort of monk session or something where I'm just feeling the energy from the food because it was so good. I can't stress how good Korea was. I was really impressed. And of course, the deals that we got on the table here, they were just even more impressive. But I will state one thing, and that was with the CPUs, motherboard and RAM. But I don't know what it was about those 3 components, but they were generally overpriced, at least compared to the other prices of PC parts there, and especially compared to Australia. So I wasn't really looking at motherboard, CPU, or RAM on any front, whether it was old Xeons, newer Intel stuff, or Ryzen stuff. It just really wasn't there, to the point where if you're building PCs and flipping them in South Korea, you may wish to get motherboards, CPU, and DDR3 or DDR4 RAM from something like AliExpress. But with all that out of the way, I got a taste of Seoul and it reinvigorated my soul. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. But also one thing I did check out too, ever since I was like a young teenager, I wanted to see a live Starcraft match in Korea, like the full-on authentic experience. And it was funny because I wasn't just the only guy there. There was like some couples on honeymoons and stuff that were in the audience too, and they must have had the same need to see this live because it was so good. I swear, like the host, he was more excited than the players in this particular tournament. He was just letting off such good energy, and that really made the whole thing come to light, even though the one guy who was the Zerg player won 4-0 against the other guy. He completely floored him and then won all the prize pool. And one of the most interesting things about these StarCraft pros was the guy who won was using a mouse from like 2008 or 2009. This was the Logitech G9X, and they had modded it. But it goes to show that really when it comes to your gear, skill is much more important than the gear. So that was definitely one thing that came out of South Korea. But getting all that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the Seoul, South Korea used PC parts hunt. If you did, be sure to hit that like button for us. But also let us know, what was your favorite deal in today's video, and I hope you've been enjoying this sort of mega used PC parts hunt tour that we did through Japan and then Korea. But later this month, we'll also be doing one on good old Gamtree locally here. So stay tuned. Make sure you hit that sub button, ring the bell if you haven't already. There is some juicy content coming to your sub boxes, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye. I wanted to say before I left that we got the Apache of deals, or the APAC.